Welcome to the Country Music Unknown Legends podcast. I'm your host, John Mathis Jr. In my recent research, looking through some of the Louisiana Hayride roster lineups in the late 50s, I noticed a name that started appearing in the program in 1956 and continued for 4 years until 1960. 4 years of playing the Louisiana Hayride, that is a good run on the Hayride. Yet it didn't make this artist a star or give him much recognition. I was not familiar with the name until I saw it on the lineup. He was on the same shows with George Jones, David Houston, Johnny Horton, Slim Whitman, Mac Wiseman, and Jimmy Martin, and many others during those 4 years. I'm talking about today's featured unknown legend, Douglas, or better known as Doug Bragg. 2 G's, B-R-A-G-G, Doug Bragg. Douglas Clifton Bragg was born in 1928 in the small East Texas town of Gilmer. He was one of 4 children born to Bonnie and James Bragg. Doug attended Gilmer Public Schools, and this is where he developed an interest in music during his teen years. He started performing in and around Tyler, Texas during the late 40s. Doug also got married for the first time early in his career and had all boys, 5 boys. By the early 50s, Doug was appearing on the Big D Jamboree in Dallas and working during the day as a butcher. Pay close attention to that. I imagine that having 5 boys to feed was part of having that day job. Hopefully, he also got a discount on hamburger. Doug's singing and showmanship garnered him a following in the regions where he appeared. His versatility was such that he was known for his yodeling, his recitations, singing straight country love songs, and he threw in some novelty numbers and some rockabilly. Versatility indeed. Doug Bragg was also known to be a handsome man with a dark complexion and slight build. He had a big voice and a winning personality. He was remembered as a man who was liked very much. For several of those early years in his career, Doug sang other people's songs, either covers of songs or original songs that were written for him, such as the Johnny Hicks song, Texas Special. Doug enjoyed moderate success with his Coral Records recording of this song and also his cover of Daydreaming. Interestingly, all through Doug's years of being a performer, he continued his daytime profession as a butcher. So in all the years that Doug recorded songs, booked performances, he managed to always remain with his daytime profession of a meat cutter, a butcher. From 1953 to 1958, Doug and his friend Louis Hayden worked together as butchers at the A&P food store in Dallas, Texas. By 1953, Doug's marriage to his first wife, Pinky, had ended in divorce. Doug would meet his second wife, Oleta Petty, at a drive-in restaurant that she owned. She had one son named Eddie. Doug's musical life became more fulfilling after his second marriage, as he had began to write and perform his own songs. Although the song credits on these recordings only credit Doug as a songwriter, a friend of the family, Alice Hayden, revealed that Doug's wife, Oleta, had become involved in the songwriting. Doug and Oleta often worked together on new material. Alice recalled that Oleta would often show her their lyrics in progress. This may explain how many of Doug's originals displayed some unusual depth and lyrical content, the behind-the-scenes collaboration with his wife. By the late 1950s, Doug was performing many more original songs. He had formed a 6-piece band, the Drifters, and had stopped appearing regularly on the Big D Jamboree because he was traveling with the band to fulfill engagements booked by promoter Pappy Daly. Pappy also was producer and owner of D Records. Doug was also now recording on Daly's D label, based in Houston, and the recordings made at D Records of these original songs were garnering wider exposure for him. Near the end of the 50s, Doug had settled in Brownsboro and had won custody of his 5 sons from his first marriage. His second marriage had produced one son, Monty, born in 1956. This gave the Bragg family a total of 7 boys, including Oleta's firstborn son, Eddie. Meanwhile, the gigs were pretty scattered geographically, so Doug built a trailer for hauling the band's instruments. Drifters band member Earl Martin remembers that it was a hard life, traveling much of the time. And perhaps no one could better attest to Doug's showmanship and his positive attitude than guitarist Earl Martin. Earl described the band's arrival for a gig at a military base where they were to play for the NCO club. Doug and the band members were tired from the long trip, and they had arrived just shortly before they were supposed to start playing. That's when they discovered there was no functioning microphone at the club. Performing as a group without a mic for the vocals was just out of the question. So Doug told the band not to worry. He took out his guitar, worked the job as a solo act, singing and playing his guitar as he moved through the audience. Among the stage shows on which Bragg occasionally appeared was Cowtown Hoedown in Fort Worth, Texas. When Doug appeared on the Hoedown, he received star billing with his name on the marquee of the Majestic Theater. Around 1961, Doug decided he would retire from the music business. Although he'd gone much further than most, there had been no major breakthrough, no major hit record. With a wife and 7 children to support, he chose to spend more time at their Brownsboro home, raising a family and continuing to work at his longtime profession as a butcher. A profession he managed to maintain during his career as a performer. During his last 10 years, he worked at Safeway grocery store in Tyler, Texas, and only performed locally at various social functions. His wife, Oletta, had become aware of some warning signs regarding Doug's health. He had complained of chest pains on a few occasions, and despite her concern, Doug would not go see a doctor. One night, as he got up from bed, he fell in the hallway, stricken with a heart attack. He died the next morning in a Tyler, Texas hospital. That date was March the 13th, 1973, at the age of 44 years old. Doug Bragg gone too soon. And even though his career was relatively short, he spent several of those years on the Louisiana Hayride, 4 of them. He had legendary producer Pappy Daly produce 10 songs for D Records. And Doug also had 2 live performances on the Grammy-nominated Bear Family Records release of At the Louisiana Hayride Tonight, that 20 CD set of 561 tracks featuring live performances from the Louisiana Hayride. So go check out Almost Lonely. The title of the song is Almost Lonely on YouTube by Doug Bragg. That's the one I found that I enjoyed the most. It has that rockabilly sound of the late 50s. Doug Bragg, our featured unknown legend today. Be sure and subscribe to the Country Music Unknown Legends podcast. Leave us a 5-star review and tell a friend who loves country music and its history all about us.